Ms. Henwood, good afternoon and welcome. You'll come forward to be sworn. Watch your step. Wherever you're comfortable, if you'll face me and raise your right hand, please. Thank you. Do you swear or affirm any testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
Thank you. If you'll follow the bailiff around to the ramp that leads up to the witness chair, please watch your step. When you get to the chair, go ahead and have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. That microphone is adjustable. Ms. Holt, you may proceed.
Thank you. Would you state your name for the record and please spell your last name?
Angelica Henwood. Henwood is spelled Henwood.
And what is your address, ma'am?
4090 52nd Avenue North, St. Petersburg, Florida, 33714.
And how are you presently employed?
I work at Raymond James.
And how long have you been employed there?
2.5 years.
And did you attend Florida State University?
Yes.
And could you tell the jury in what years that was?
From fall of 2013 to summer semester of 2015.
And when you first began attending Florida State University, did you live in a dorm or did you live in an apartment?
The first year I lived in a dorm. And the second year.
I'm sorry. Do you recall the name of the dorm?
Divini, I believe.
And then you indicated the second year you lived?
In an apartment.
And did you continue to live in an apartment until you graduated?
Yes.
Okay. And when you first moved in, did you have any assistance in moving in?
For the dorm, no. For the apartment, yes.
And during the time period that you were there, what was the major that you were studying for?
Business management.
And was that the degree you actually received from Florida State University?
Yes.
Before you went to Florida State University, did you and your family talk about, I'm going to go to college, here's what I want to study, things like that?
Yes.
And did anyone direct you in terms of what you should major in school at all?
No, my family was just happy I was going to college.
Did you choose your own major?
Yes.
And did you have any long-term plan of what you wanted to do with your major, or you just chose what you thought you might be interested in?
I knew I wanted to work in business, and I figured I'd find my way once I was in a business environment.
During the time period that you were at Florida State University, did you meet an individual by the name of Laura Hessmer?
Yes.
And do you recall when that was?
The day I moved into my apartment, she was a random roommate assignment.
And so you all actually lived together in your apartments?
Yes.
And can you describe for the jury what that apartment setup was like?
It was 4 individual bedrooms with bathrooms and then a shared communal living space.
And did you continue to be roommates until you graduated?
Yes.
And would you consider Laura to be a good friend?
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, are you going to be a bridesmaid in Laura's wedding?
Yes.
And during the time period that you were living at Florida State University, did you date or anything of that sort?
I was actually married.
And during the time period that you and Laura were friends and living together, do you know whether or not Laura dated and had social activities?
Yes, she had a boyfriend named Jeff who is now her fiance.
And did Laura and Jeff spend time with you there at the apartment as well as away from the apartment?
Yes.
And did y'all participate in social activities together?
Yes. Festivals and shopping and hanging out at the pool and that kind of thing.
Did you, as a result of your friendship and living with Laura in the apartment, have occasion to meet an individual by the name of Nicole Nachtman?
Yes.
And do you recall about when that was?
It was right after we moved in, maybe about September. I believe that Nicole was in a class with Laura, so she would, come over and hang out with us.
And that would have been September of what year?
2014.
And could you look around the courtroom and see if you see the individual that you knew as Nicole Nachtman? And if you can, just share a piece of clothing or something that you see.
She's wearing like a green pullover.
If the record might reflect that the defendant's been identified, Judge.
Record shall so reflect.
And did you consider yourself to be friends with Nicole Nachtman?
Yes, general friends.
The same type of friendship that you had with Laura?
No, me and Laura were like super close. We talked about everything. Nicole was more of a let's hang out when we have the ability to.
Did you ever meet any individuals that Nicole Nachtman hung out with or considered friends other than yourself and Laura?
No.
Did you have the other two individuals that lived within your apartment, did they become friends with Nicole?
Oh no, we weren't even friends with them.
All right, so you had a good relationship with Laura, one of your roommates, and then the other two roommates, that was just not
Not a good situation.
not in consideration, but you lived and learned how to survive together.
Yeah.
During the time period that you knew Nicole, because you indicated that you met her right around September of 2014, that would have been your fall semester, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any classes with Nicole at all?
No.
Do you know whether or not Laura had any classes with her?
I want to say that they had a class together.
Would you have occasion to see Nicole on campus either in the fall of 2014 or in the spring of 2015?
I don't remember ever running into her on campus.
Whenever you would go out and socialize outside of the apartment that you all lived in and hung out together, when you all go out and do social activities, did Nicole go with you all on those activities?
Yes.
And would you describe for us what your physical observations of Nicole were? And I'm not talking about 5'1" or 100 pounds or something like that. I'm talking about overall physical observations of Nicole.
She was very shy, wore a lot of sweaters even though it was hot out. She generally just was kind of a self-drawn person. She generally just, kind of was very average.
Just average?
Yes.
Okay. Did you consider to be an outgoing individual?
No.
Okay. And how would you describe that part of her life?
She was very, not just shy, but kind of like overall a sad demeanor, kind of very withdrawn within herself. You kind of had to try and work with her to get a good conversation going.
Did you ever have a conversation with Nicole about how she felt about attending Florida State University and how she felt she fit in?
I don't know about anything sort of with like Florida State itself. I knew she wanted to be in college, but I felt like she wasn't happy with what like her major was and things along that line.
Going to her major, do you have any idea what the major was that she had?
No.
But you said that you didn't think that she was happy. Did she? What was your impression of why she had the particular major that she did?
We talked about it, and she said that it was something that her mom wanted and chose for her.
Did you encourage Nicole Nachtman in any way to make independent decisions for herself?
Yes, I thought that she should try and study something that I felt she would be happy in college for.
And what was Nicole's response and reaction to your suggestion that she make more independent type of decisions?
I feel like she wanted to make sure that she did what her mom wanted her to do.
And you indicated that she would wear sweatshirts when you thought that it was just like too hot outside or something of that sort?
Yes.
Did you get an impression of why it was that Nicole would wear sweatshirts?
She was a little uncomfortable with her body. She was never, she wasn't supermodel skinny, but she was a very healthy size, and I felt like for some reason she thought she was overweight. She was a little bit concerned about the size of her breasts. She often would fight us on trying to get her to buy a bigger bra size because her boobs were kind of overbound, and we wanted to have her be a little bit more comfortable.
So, as a matter of fact, you and Laura tried to help her go and find clothing that would fit her more appropriately in terms of her undergarments. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And again, did you ever notice whether or not Nicole was the type of person who would take good care of her hygiene, for instance?
No, she often kind of had like a BO type smell, and you could tell like maybe her clothes hadn't been washed. She consistently wore the same sweater a lot.
And did you, well, let me ask you this, do you have personal knowledge of whether or not Laura Hesmer also made those same types of observations?
Yes, we would often mention like, hey, if you need to use our shower while you're staying the night, or if you need to, wash your clothes or whatever, we have that available. I know in the dorms it wasn't always easy to do laundry, and we tried to kind of make it seem like she was welcome to do that at our house.
And how did Nicole Nachtman respond to your suggestions for either, hey, you can use our shower or you can use our laundry?
She kind of brushed it off and said, she'd think about it. I've never seen her do any laundry or anything along those lines.
What about in terms of how she kept herself in terms of makeup or hair or things of that sort?
She was rather against makeup at the one time that I did mention it, and she was actually kind of like had a kind of a greasier appearance. Her hair was kind of greasy.
Did you, as a result, well, I'll strike that. Did there come a time where you noticed that Nicole was coming over maybe and spending a little bit more time in your apartment than just coming and hanging?
Usually the weekends were the big time. Football games on campus required her to park in a separate garage, so just to avoid any confusion, she'd park at our place and spend the night for a few days.
Okay. Well, she would come and stay with you on the weekends, especially during football season. You said to avoid confusion. Was that about where to park her car?
Yes, you would be towed if you parked your car in the wrong garage.
And had she in fact had her car towed because she had parked inappropriately?
Yes.
And when she would come and park at your apartment complex, how long would she leave the car there for? The day of the football game or more? Or?
She'd come over the night before the football game, and then went before school started again on Monday. She would go back to campus.
Did you and or Laura attempt to show Nicole where she could properly park to avoid the back and forth of the car?
We made a few offers, but she made it seem like she was happier just having fun with us on the weekends, so we didn't really push it.
Did you ever, let me ask you this, did you have a kitchen in your shared area?
Yes.
And did y'all sometimes cook in there
Yes.
and hang out together and have dinner or something of that sort?
Yes.
Did you notice whether or not Nicole had any culinary skills?
No, I never noticed her cooking anything, and maybe like, grabbing some chips or heating something up in the microwave would have been the extent of it.
Was it your impression that Nicole knew how to cook, or was it just that she preferred not to?
I never got the impression that she knew how to cook.
Did you have an impression on how Nicole interacted in terms of going to school or anything of that sort? Was she going to all her classes?
I wasn't sure if she was going to all her classes, but I did know that she had to go to school in fall semester her ROTC program.
And so in the fall, she was in the ROTC program, and you had personal knowledge that she was in that, correct?
Yes.
Matter of fact, you had a friend that was also in the program, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you learn that Nicole did not have that same opportunity in the spring of 2015?
Yes.
Okay. And you had personal knowledge of that, not only from Nicole, but also from your friend, is
Yes.
that correct? And do you have any knowledge of why Nicole was not able to stay in that program?
I know some of the leadership in ROTC was concerned about her, skills in accomplishing tasks. I also know from Nicole that she mentioned, her grades might have been...
Hold on. Don't testify to what Nicole told you.
Oh,
So only what you observed.
okay.
So there was a concern about her leadership, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And what about in terms of your observations of the type of hours that Nicole would keep? When would she sleep? When would she be awake?
She was definitely a night owl,
And when would she sleep?
usually during the day.
And you would notice that even on the weekends?
Yes, especially on the weekends.
Especially on the weekends. Okay, and what did you notice in terms of her interest with computers?
She was always on her computer. It seemed like she was writing or maybe chatting with people.
And would that be even during the time period that y'all were having some type of socialization within your apartment?
Her computer would be close by. She wouldn't always have it open, but for the most part, yes.
And what did you learn in terms of Miss Nachtman's interest in the movie Frozen and a character called Elsa?
She ran like a Tumblr blog that was about Elsa in some form. She ended up dyeing her hair blonde because she wanted to be more like Elsa. It was just a general character obsession.
So you felt that this was kind of a character obsession that she had.
Yes.
And what was your impression about that in terms of the fact that Miss Nachtman was in college and was an upperclassman at that point? What was your impression?
It was a little strange at first, just the level of the obsession, considering that it was a children's Disney movie. But we tried not to mention it too much, as it made her feel more comfortable in her own skin.
Okay, and I was going to ask you about that. In terms of, for instance, the body odor and the wanting perhaps for her to shower or maybe to wash her clothes, and then in terms of Elsa and Frozen, Did you and Laura attempt to gently talk to Miss Nachtman about those things?
Yes, we did mention it maybe a few times. We tried to be as gentle and polite as possible to try and get her, on the same page as far as what she, like maybe she should try and clean up a little bit, just for her own sanity.
And did there, how would you describe her in terms of her chronological years versus how she had it in terms of a demeanor and how she acted with people? So, 18, did she act appropriately? 19, did she act appropriately? She was about 20, 21. How did you think that she was acting?
She had a little bit of a more immature mentality compared to some of the other people. I know she required a lot of help in just getting regular things done on campus and stuff.
And when you say regular things, are you talking about like the day-to-day things that a college student has to do once they're sent away from home?
Yes.
Okay. And did you and Laura attempt to help her with those things?
Yes.
And was it still your impression that Miss Nachtman had difficulty in navigating the normal everyday life of a college student?
Yes.
Did you learn, or did you become aware that Miss Nachtman's grades started to decline at some point in time?
Yes, over fall semester I became aware of the fact that her grades were slipping, and that's why she lost her ROTC.
And did you also become aware of Miss Nachtman changing her actual grades for the purposes of showing them to someone else?
Yes.
And who was it that she was changing the grades for?
Her mother.
And did you have an impression of why Miss Nachtman was changing her grades in order to show, and let me ask it this way, was she changing her grades for the better or for the worse?
To make them appear better.
And did you have an impression of why Miss Nachtman was making the changes for the better to her grades to show to her mother?
She didn't want to disappoint her mom. That was a big fear for her.
Okay, it was a big fear for her?
Yes.
And how would you describe what you perceive to be the relationship that Miss Nachtman had with her mother?
She was under her mom's thumb. She badly wanted to be approved by her mother. Felt like she was constantly doing things to make sure that she got her mother's approval.
Was it your impression that Miss Nachtman was being successful in getting her mother's approval?
No.
And why was that?
Just because of the fact that she continually tried to do things to make sure that her mother didn't find out about anything that she may have been disappointed in.
Did you become aware at some point in time that Miss Nachtman had either lost or her bike had been stolen?
Yes, she mentioned that she was renting a storage unit for summer semester so that she didn't have to explain the disappearance of her bike to her parents.
And is it true that Miss Nachtman didn't know whether she had lost it or had been stolen?
Correct.
That's based on your conversation with Miss Nachtman?
She wasn't even sure where she had left it.
Did you have an impression as to whether or not Miss Nachtman was anxious in any way in how she interacted with her mother?
I wasn't sure about any sort of anxiety, more so that she just seemed like she wasn't happy to go home for the summer semester.
So she did not seem to be happy to go back home like most of the other college students were?
Right, we were asking her, like, hey, what do you plan on doing for the summer? You should come visit us, and she just mentioned that it may have not been a possibility.
Did Miss Nachtman talk about other family members, such as a brother?
Yes, that was her best friend, she said.
Okay. Did she talk to you about her other family, such as her uncles and her grandmother?
Just her grandmother.
Okay. And was it your impression that she had a good relationship with her grandmother?
Yes.
Did you ever have occasion to overhear phone calls between Miss Nachtman and her mother at all?
No, I never heard any phone calls.
With regards to Miss Nachtman's use of the computer, were there occasions where you would come into a room and see Miss Nachtman verbally engaging with her computer?
Yes, so she wouldn't stay in our rooms when she stayed the night. She usually used like the couch in the living room area, and she'd be up all night on the computer. Sometimes she'd be kind of mumbling, wasn't sure what she was saying. It was kind of nonsense.
So, you don't know if she was talking to the computer or if she was talking in a chat room, for instance?
No, it just seemed like she was trying to plan out maybe what she was trying to say, something along those lines.
But whatever she was saying didn't seem to make sense to you in terms of the words that were being spoken.
Right.
Did you ever ask Miss Nachtman about what she was doing at the time?
Usually it was her Elsa blog.
And so you knew what it was and you just weren't going to inquire about what she was mumbling about.
Right.
Did you also come to learn about what one of the reasons was why Miss Nachtman wanted to spend the weekends away from her dorm?
I know she wasn't a big fan of her roommates. They didn't include her in on a lot of things.
Do you have any personal knowledge of whether or not Miss Nachtman was sent money by her mother or anything like that while she was at school?
No.
Do you have any personal knowledge of whether or not her mother is who purchased, whether it be her computer or her car or anything like that?
No.
Was it your general impression that Miss Nachtman, you had to handle conflict in any way whatsoever?
No, she wasn't a confrontational person whatsoever.
I think, as a matter of fact, I think in the past you described her as docile.
Yes.
And was it your impression that her fear and or her desire to please her mother were true emotions that she was feeling?
Yes.
Have nothing further at this moment, Judge.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon. Ms. Nachtman was someone to you who appeared very sheltered, is that correct?
Yes.
She's also someone who appeared that she wanted the easy answers.
Yes.
Didn't want to have to spend a lot of time trying to figure things out.
Yes.
Like the parking situation. She didn't want to have to try and figure out what garage to go to. It was just easier to park at your apartment.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier on that when you moved into your dorm room, nobody helped you, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Nachtman's biggest fear was disappointing her mom, is that right?
Yes.
Her mom disapproving of the things that she did.
Yes.
This bike that they asked you about and that she rented a storage unit so that she didn't have to tell her mom that she lost her bike, you stated, I believe, that she didn't know whether the bike was stolen or whether she lost it. She had no idea, is that right?
Right. No recollection of where she may have left it, so she didn't even know how to go look for it.
Okay, and so she rented a storage unit to try and cover it up
Yes.
so that she didn't have to tell her mom the truth about whatever happened with the bike that she didn't even know.
Yes.
Can I just have one moment, Judge?
Absolutely.
Nothing further, thank you.
Redirect.
Very briefly, Judge. The renting of the storage unit to cover up what had happened with the bike was because Miss Nachtman feared the repercussions of her mother. Could I ask the question first?
Well, hold on. Yeah, let her finish the question, but please don't lead her.
Yes, Judge. The cover-up of the bicycle and the rental of the storage unit, I think the state asked you, was it because she was afraid that her mother would find out, right?
Yes, she didn't want to disappoint her mother in saying that she had lost or had her bike stolen or didn't know where it was.
And was it your impression that in disappointing her mother, there could be repercussions by her mother for her actions?
The only thing that I could say for sure is that she just didn't want to disappoint her.
All right, thank you very much, ma'am.
May this witness be excused by the defense
By the defense, yes?
and by the state?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You may step down. You may be excused as a witness at this time.
And Judge, as soon as Ms. Henwood walks past me, I'd like to, at this time, seek to introduce without objection from the state, Defense Exhibit number 8,
No objection, Judge.
It'll be admitted.
the transcript of Ms. Nachtman's records at Florida State University, and if I might publish.
You may, let's just put the number on the record. It's
Number
defense,
8.
what, 8. It will be admitted at this time, and yes, you may publish.
There it is. Thank you, Sarah. And then page 2. Thank you, Judge.
I'll ask that you call your next witness.
George Lear.
George Lear. Mr. Lear, good afternoon and welcome, sir. You'll come forward to be sworn wherever you're comfortable. If you'll face me and raise your right hand, please. Sure. Thank you very much. Do you swear or affirm any testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. If you'll follow the bailiff around to the ramp that leads up to the witness chair, please watch your step. When you get to that chair, go ahead and have a seat, make yourself comfortable. That microphone is adjustable. Ms. Holt, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. If you would state your name for the record, please,
George Lear,
and spell your last name, please.
Lehr.
And Mr. Lear, where do you live? What is the address?
10,030 Tranquility Way, Tampa, Florida.
And are you employed, sir?
Yes,
And where are you employed?
at the VA hospital.
And what do you do there?
I work as a microbiologist.
And just very briefly, what is your education?
I got a BS in microbiology.
And what school did you go to?
USF.
And you recall what year you graduated?
1984.
And
83.
I'm sorry?
83 or 84.
And are you married, sir?
Yes,
And do you have any children?
no children.
And if I could just ask you, do you know an individual by the name of Nicole Nachtman?
Yes, I do.
And how do you know Nicole Nachtman?
She's my niece.
And if you would, just look around the courtroom for a minute and see if you can identify Nicole and tell me a piece of clothing she's wearing.
She's wearing a sweater.
What color sweater?
It's like green or olive green.
All right. Record may reflect the identification, Your Honor.
Record shall so reflect.
And were you related to Nicole's mother?
Yes, I'm the brother.
Okay, you were Miriam's brother, correct?
Yes.
All right. Was there a nickname that you all called Miriam?
Bali.
Okay. All right, and how many siblings in total are there?
6 of us.
Okay. Tell me in order from the oldest to the youngest.
Albert, Artie, me, Peter behind me, and then Bali, my sister, and then Eric,
So you're basically right in the middle?
right in the middle.
And if you could, just starting again at the oldest, what was the age difference between the 6 siblings?
Let's see,
As best
between
as
me and them? Or?
As best as you recall.
Okay, my oldest brother is 3 years older than me. The next one is 2 years older, or a year and a half older than me. And the one behind me is a little over a year behind me. Miriam was like 3 years behind me. Let's see, yeah, 3 years behind me. And then Eric was like, I think he's like 6 years or 7 years behind me.
All right. And so there were 5 boys and 1 girl, Miriam, correct?
Yes.
All right. And your mother's name is also Miriam, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And she's still living.
She's still living.
And how about your father?
He's passed away.
And about how long ago was
Oh,
that?
I'm sorry, one of the jurors is having a little trouble hearing you. If you can get just a little closer to the microphone, you'll know when it amplifies your voice. You'll be able to
Sure.
tell.
Okay. My father passed away in 2001.
All right. And with regards to right now, today, in 2019, what siblings are you close to?
I'm kind of close to all of them, really.
Okay. Is there anyone that you don't speak to?
I speak to all of them.
Okay. Anyone that doesn't speak to you in terms of your siblings?
Oh, no, I speak to all of them.
Okay. Is there a nephew or anything, or nieces or anything that you don't speak to? Or that they don't speak to you?
Well, it's possible that they don't speak to me.
Okay.
But
Who would that
I
be?
never hear from Joey. I don't hear from him. David, don't hear from him either.
Right, so are you talking about Joey Carey?
Joey Carrier.
And that would be Miriam's son also, correct?
Right, yes.
And how long has it been since you hear from Joey?
The last time I spoke to him is on the death of my sister during the wake, and after that, never heard from him.
And what about David? Whose son is David?
David is Peter's son, and I haven't heard from him in a long time.
And
I
that's
did visit him one time where at Peter's home, and we just kind of like said hello, and that was it.
Now, how far away do you live from the residence that your mom lives at?
About 4 miles away.
How often do you see your mother?
I go there 3 or 4 times a week to just pass through, if anything.
And do you talk to her when you haven't been visiting?
Yes, I call her on the phone sometimes. Yes.
Now, when you were growing up, were any of the siblings closer to each other?
We're about the same, all of us.
And how did Miriam feel about being the only girl growing up among 5 boys?
She wanted to be like one of us. You know, she didn't understand why she couldn't do the same things that we did.
Yeah. And did she try pretty much to keep up with the boys as much as she could?
Oh yes.
And what was the only difference? So she could really keep up with you all physically, but were there differences that your parents let the boys do that they wouldn't let the girls do?
Oh yeah, we went and got jobs, packing groceries at the commissary, and
If you need to take a few minutes, please do so.
she wanted to work, but she was too young, and she was a little young girl, but she couldn't understand why she couldn't get a job like the rest of us.
And about how old were you when you first started working?
The commissary was like 14 years old.
And did you grow up the majority of your life here in Tampa, Florida?
At this stage, yes, I've been here quite a bit, but in later years. I've been here since 2001, but I did come here in 1975 with my dad, and I went to school, and then I went to work in other places like Chicago and Arkansas and Mississippi due to my job.
Were you born here in Florida?
No,
Where were you born?
Beaufort, South Carolina.
And what did your father do for a living?
Mechanic.
And was anyone in the military at all while you were growing up?
My dad was in the military when we were growing up.
Okay. And he was a mechanic in the military? Or was that afterwards?
That was afterwards.
When you were growing up and your father was in the military, did there come times when he had to leave the family?
Oh yes, every time I sent him overseas, like Vietnam and any place that we pack up and go to my mom's home.
Okay, when you say we would pack up and we would go to my mom's home, we would be who? The siblings?
Oh, my brothers and sister and my mom.
Okay, and you say you would go to your mom's home. What would be your mom's home?
Puerto Rico.
Okay, so y'all would go where there were other family members?
Yes.
Now, did your mom go to college?
Yes, she sure did.
Judge, no reproach,
Legal basis?
relevance at this point.
Sustained.
Okay.
And did there come a time where you had occasion to meet Miriam's first husband, Joseph Carey Sr.?
Yes, I met him when they were dating in college.
And when they were dating, where was Miriam living?
She was living at home,
Well, living in what state?
here in Florida,
Okay, and she met Joseph Carey Sr. while y'all were living here in Florida.
right here in Florida, yes.
And do you recall how long they dated before they married?
Oh, I think they might have dated for a couple of years.
Judge Oberman also objects relevance at this point.
Approach.
During the time period that Miriam was married with Joseph Carey Sr., did you ever have any personal discussions with Miriam about their relationship at all? Don't tell me anything that anybody said, but were there ever any discussions?
No.
Okay. Did there come a time then when you learned that Miriam was pregnant by an individual by the name of Ron Nachtman?
Yes.
And did you ever meet Ron Nachtman?
No.
At the time that your sister became pregnant by Ron Nachtman, was she still going through a divorce with Joseph Carey Sr., to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time that your sister became pregnant with by Ron Nachtman, both Joey Carey and Kevin Carey had already been born and were living either with their mother or sometimes here in Florida with the family, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Let me ask you a little bit about Kevin and Joey Carey Sr. Before Nicole was born, would you have occasion to see Joey and Kevin, whether it be in Texas or any other place, Florida?
Yes.
Okay. And would that be because they would visit the family?
Yes, they were visiting.
And did you sometimes go visit your sister where she was living?
I went to visit her in Virginia one time.
And was anybody living there with her in terms of either Joey or Kevin or even Nicole?
I believe at the time, Joey was not, Joe was not there. Joe Sr. was not there.
No, Joey Jr., I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, he was there. Him and Kevin.
And when you were there visiting, at any point in time, you indicated that you never had occasion to meet Ron Nachtman.
That's correct.
When did you first meet Nicole Nachtman, your niece? When did you first meet her?
I met her in Florida when I was visiting my mom on vacation, I believe.
And at the time, where were you living? That would have been in 1994.
94, I believe I was in Arkansas.
And you would have been here visiting your mother in Tampa, correct?
Yes.
And somehow or another, Nicole's also here visiting.
Yes.
Do you know under what circumstances Nicole was visiting your mother?
I don't recall, but she was there visiting. That was the first time I saw her there.
Do you recall about how old she was?
I think she was about between 6, 7, or 8 years old. 7 or something.
And did you become aware that there had been a custody battle between Ronald Nachtman and your sister over Nicole Nachtman and where she would live and what kind of visitation would occur and things of that sort?
Yes, but I heard about this before I met Nicole.
So you became aware of problems between Miriam and Ronald before Nicole was even born?
Well, no, I heard after she was born.
All right, after she was born, you learned about problems.
Right.
Did you yourself ever personally see any interaction between Ronald Nachtman and Miriam? You said you haven't met him, so you don't know anything personally, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you were also aware that at some point in time, Miriam married a man by the name of Bob Deans, is that correct?
Yes.
And when did you learn about Bob Deans and Miriam being married?
Well, I don't know the exact date, but it was much later. I can't recall the date.
And at the time that you learned about this, were you aware that Miriam had been dating an individual by the name of Bob Deans?
Yes.
Had you ever met Mr. Deans while Miriam and he were dating?
No, I met him after they were married.
And you met him after he were married. Did you meet him here in Florida or in Virginia?
Here in Florida.
Okay. Was that after they moved here from Virginia?
I think they were still in Virginia. They might have been down here visiting.
And you had occasion to meet him?
I met him, yes.
And where did you meet him at?
At my mom's home.
And at the time that you met him, how would you describe Mr. Dean's demeanor?
Oh, he was kind of shy and quiet, Yes.
And how would you describe Miriam's demeanor, not as a child, as an adult?
She was nice, I guess you'd say. I mean, toward him, you say, or?
Well, I mean, what was her demeanor? You're saying that he was shy, and what was your sister
my
like?
sister was outgoing.
She was outgoing?
Yes.
And in in the observations, the personal observations you ever made between Miriam and Nicole, what type of disciplinarian, how would you describe your sister Miriam as a disciplinarian?
She was tough on Nicole.
She was tough on Nicole? Could you give us an example of what you mean by tough on Nicole?
Well, I can't, well, like one time, she ran out of gas and all that. I went to help her get some gas in her car, and she, after I helped her out and get her gas and all that, and she told me don't tell her mom.
Okay, so can I assume from this that the person who runs out of gas is Nicole?
Nicole, right?
And so can I assume that she was old enough to be driving at that point?
Yes, she was, yes.
Do you know what the legal driving age here in Florida is by any chance?
I believe it's 16.
Okay, so Nicole at least was 16 years of age.
Yes, yes,
Okay. And apparently she ran out of gas.
yes.
And at the time, was her mother living here in Florida?
Yes.
And she called you instead of her mom, is that correct?
Well, she couldn't get a hold of anyone. She called me, yes.
Okay, she called you, and you helped her get the gas.
Yes,
And then she said to you, please don't tell mom.
yes.
And what was your impression of why Nicole told you that?
I kind of figured that she would be scolded for it.
She would be what?
Scolded,
Scolded for it?
probably.
At the time, was Nicole working at all?
I don't believe she was working though.
And in terms of when you say that your sister could be tough on Nicole, can you think of other examples where you saw an interaction between Nicole and her mother and the manner in which Nicole was being disciplined?
No other time. No,
Okay.
I recall.
Did there come a time where you learned that Nicole was living in an apartment here in Tampa while she was still attending Sickles High School?
Yes.
And do you recall how old Nicole was at the time?
I believe she was like either 17 or 18 years old at the time.
And she was still in high school?
Still in high school.
And at the time, do you know where your sister was?
Tom, I believe she was in the military. She was still doing work in the military.
When Nicole was in high school, was your sister already married to Bob Deans?
Yes, yes. Mhm.
And did you have occasion to visit Nicole at that apartment?
Yes, I did.
On more than one occasion?
More than one occasion, yes.
Were you surprised to learn that Nicole was living there by herself?
Well, yes, she was by herself, and we tried to call over there. My mom too tried to call her, and nobody picked up the phone. So my mom asked me to go over there and check on her. So I'd go out there and check on her.
Prior to Nicole living at that apartment by herself, were there any conversations with Miriam about the fact that she was going to have Nicole live by herself? Did she ever talk to the family about that?
No,
Prior to that occasion, had Nicole ever lived with family members here in Tampa while Miriam was away in the service?
she was staying with my mother.
She would stay with your mother?
Yes.
And during the time period that she would stay with your mother, were there other family members that had to help your mother with Nicole?
Yes, me and my brothers would, help her drive her somewhere or whatever she needed to do. To take her out and do something with her, entertainment.
And that would be because your mother doesn't drive, is that correct?
My mother doesn't drive, yes.
So you helped not only your mother, but you had to help your mother with Nicole.
Correct, yes.
And did the family object to having to help Nicole and
no.
your mother at all, taking care of Nicole?
No, not at all.
Did there come a time where you where you and the family found out that Miriam was going to place or send Nicole to the Air Academy, which is a boarding school?
I was there when they made that decision, yes, when she made that decision to send her over there.
Okay, and when you say she made the decision, are you saying that that was the decision Miriam made?
Miriam, yes.
And did the family agree with that decision?
We didn't agree with that at all.
And why was it that you didn't
I'm
think?
gonna object.
Legal.
Relevance at this point.
I'm sorry?
Relevance, whether they agreed with Miriam's parenting decisions, I'm not sure what the relevance of that is.
Approach.
don't think it was.
Okay, and why was that?
Well, she needed help and all that. There was no one there to help her out if she suddenly needed help.
Okay, at the time you didn't think Nicole could take care of herself?
I didn't think so.
Okay, and why was that? What was it that you had started to see happening to Nicole during this time period?
Well, one time I drove up there to, well, she'd come and visit on the weekends, and sometimes we would drive up there, or drive her all the way, and there was one time I drove all the way up there, and we'd be walking around, she'd say hello to these people, and the way we'd return the hello to her.
So you were concerned that she hadn't been able to make friends?
That's correct.
During the entire time that Nicole lived and or visited with your mother, and you yourself would also be at your mother's, did you ever see Nicole with any friends at your mother's house?
No, not really.
Who was the only person of Nicole's age that Nicole had interaction with when she was living with your mother and with the family?
As far as friends goes,
Friend or a family member?
well, my brother would take her out with my nephew, and they'd go and do some things together sometimes.
So your brother would take her places with the nephew, and his name is?
Hunter.
And that would be the only person of her own age that she would have interactions with for social activities, if I'm hearing you correctly?
That's correct.
Did you also learn of a time where Nicole had a computer incident that happened to her?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and tell us about that.
Oh,
And this is something that you yourself know about,
oh,
correct?
yes, I was there. She had loaned her computer to a friend at school, and her friend didn't return the computer, so she got me and my brothers to go down there to see if we could get the computer back. We all went down there, we knocked on the door. This person was living in a trailer, and we saw the blinds open up, but the girl was in there, and she wouldn't open the door.
Now, had Nicole even tried to get the computer back?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And she had been unable to, correct?
That's correct.
And so then she told you all about it?
Told us about it, we went down there. And,
Okay. And did you tell your sister about this incident?
well, she found out after, and she just said, well, I'll just get her another computer.
Did there come a time where you saw changes in how Nicole interacted with the family around whenever y'all were hanging out together? Did there come a time where you saw changes in her?
Well, yes, she'd just come in through the door, wouldn't say hello to anyone, just go back in the room by herself back there. And there were times where I saw she was up there in the wee hours in the room back there, just on her computer or what. And I've heard her talking to herself back there on several occasions. I'd open up the door and she was just talking to herself, having like it was another person was in there.
Okay, and you would hear her, she was talking loud enough that you would hear it,
Oh,
and
yes.
you would go open the door because you wanted to
Yes.
figure out what was going on?
What's going on?
Now, do you know whether or not it's possible if she was talking to somebody on the computer?
Well, no, because I looked in there, she was no phone, no computer,
And so she would just be talking to herself?
talking to herself.
What about her hygiene? What did you start to notice about how she physically looked? About her hair, her clothes, anything like that?
Well, to me, I never got close enough to, perceive anything, but she didn't look like she was very happy with herself. And she looked like, well, I heard that she was trying to lose weight too.
Okay, so don't tell me anything that somebody said to you, but you came to the point where you thought that Nicole Nachtman just wasn't happy with herself.
Exactly.
Did you know her as a young child?
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah.
Was she happy as a young
Oh,
child?
she was really outgoing. I mean, she'd get dressed up like a gypsy and all that, and we'd be embarrassed to take her anywhere. We'd be telling her, go put some different clothes on or something, something more normal to us, I guess.
Okay, so she went from being maybe a little eccentric and outgoing
Oh, very outgoing.
to then becoming someone that would just come into the house,
Like
not say hello, and just like if nobody's there and go to her room.
Yeah, almost like a recluse.
Did you talk about what you were seeing with other family members without telling me what anybody said back to you?
Well, You know, I just tell my mom sometimes, mention it to her, you know, she walks in, doesn't even say hello. You know, yeah, that kind of thing, you know. Just,
Did the family talk among themselves about the things they were starting to see without telling me what those things were? Did you start to talk among yourselves about what was going on with Nicole?
well, I didn't really talk with anyone about anything, really, to tell you the truth.
Only your mother?
Only my mother.
Did you talk to Nicole about her getting ready to go to college?
No.
Did you know about whether or not what she was studying in college or anything of that sort?
I didn't know exactly what she was studying, but I knew she was going to go to college.
Now, when Nicole graduated from Sickles High School, were you living here in Tampa, Florida?
Yes, I was.
Did you attend her high school graduation?
No.
How did you think that Nicole felt in terms of her self-perception? How did she see herself?
I don't think she was very happy with herself.
Did she seem to be somebody that was proud of herself?
No.
Of the things that she accomplished in life at all?
No.
Do you recall observing how Nicole might react to any individual that might try to tease her or something, or have kind of make fun of her at all? Did you ever see how she reacted to that?
Her brother, Kevin, who passed away, he used to pick on her a lot and tease her, and it would make her mad.
Okay, she didn't react well to that?
She didn't appreciate that.
To the best of your knowledge, were you aware of Nicole undergoing liposuction surgery?
I heard that she,
So you were not aware of it personally?
personally, I was not.
Were you aware of anything to do with LASIK surgery?
No.
Do you yourself have any idea of how many schools Nicole attended throughout her years?
I know at least 3 or 4, at least.
Here in the Tampa area?
Well, in Tampa area, Florida Air School and the Sickles, that's all that I know. But I know in Virginia, other places that she lived at, she attended other schools.
And you know there was some number, you're just not sure of all the numbers.
Right, yes.
Okay. Did you ever see Miriam hug or kiss Nicole in your presence?
Never.
Did it appear to you, based on what you saw in how Nicole and Miriam interacted, that they had some type of emotional bond whatsoever?
Never.
When you would visit with Nicole at the Air Academy, did she appear to be happy to be there?
No, she was not happy.
You knew that she was not happy.
That's correct. Yes.
Did you ever try to talk to Miriam about how unhappy Nicole was at the Air Academy?
No.
To the best of your knowledge, did you ever try to obtain any type of counseling or any type of intervention for Nicole?
No.
Did you ever have a power of attorney for Nicole or a guardianship for Nicole?
No.
Did your sister ever ask you specifically to take care of her daughter?
No.
Okay, that would have been your mother?
Yes.
Anyone else that you're aware of?
Well, you know, as far as like driving her to school and all that and pick her up at that bus stop, that I did those kind of things. So did my brother, Eric. He did that too. I just want to say that I only saw Nicole one time with Bali, where they came over to help paint the front of the house, my mom's house, and they were acting kind of jovial, but that was about it. You know.
Okay, so they might be joking around, but you
Joking
just
around.
never saw the kissing, the
No.
hugging, the emotional bond?
No, never.
Now, Miriam did pay for her to go to the Air Academy though, correct?
Yes,
And she did pay for her to go to FSU, correct?
yes,
And she would pay for her computers, and
Yes.
things like that, correct?
yes.
Now, did there come a time when you actually would see that Nicole would try to hide food from people that she was eating?
Yes.
And when did that happen?
At my mom's house,
And do you have any idea why she would do that?
because she didn't want anyone to know that she was sneaking, you know, ice cream bars is what she was going for.
Would you have been mad if she'd have been asking you for ice cream bars?
Oh, no,
Would your mother have been mad?
no.
Do you have any idea who it was that Nicole was trying to hide food from?
Speculation.
Maybe she,
Hold on, I'm gonna sustain it's speculation.
Do you know from your own personal knowledge who was worried about Nicole's weight?
yes,
And who was that?
her mother.
And would you ever describe Nicole as being obese?
No,
Were there any occasions other than the one incident that you've already talked to me about, the gas, where Nicole indicated, please don't tell mom? Any other incidents that you saw or heard yourself?
well, several occasions she said that to me, but you know, the one I recall the most is the one about the gas. The gas running
So
out.
you heard that on more than one occasion,
Yes,
but time has passed and you can't be specific?
correct, is.
Did there ever come a time where you would see that Nicole was at your mother's house and y'all were all there spending time together and Nicole would receive a call from your sister?
No,
Did you ever overhear any phone conversations between your sister and Nicole?
no,
Did you have occasion to go to the home on Fensbury that your sister lived at with Bob?
yes.
And on approximately how many occasions have you been to that home prior, obviously, to August of 2015?
I'd say about 5 or 6 times.
And during that time that you were there in that home, would Nicole be engaged with Miriam and Bob and the family?
No.
And where would she be?
She'd be sitting on the couch, looking at a computer or watching some horror movie that they were watching on TV.
That the family was watching on TV, some horror movie? Yes?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Did you ever see Bob Deans do anything that could be considered fatherly for Nicole?
Well, I've never seen her hug or kiss or anything like that. No.
Whenever Miriam was out of town for work purposes, where would Nicole stay if she wasn't at FSU most of the time?
I think she would be visiting my mom, or I think she just stayed by herself at her mother's place.
Did you ever see Nicole do the daily duties of things like clean a house, mow the lawn,
No.
wash clothes?
No.
Okay, I think that you did see her cook once, is that correct?
Oh yeah, she invited me over to. She had cooked some steaks out there for me. Invited me over to eat.
And how did she do with the steak that she cooked for you?
Well, I thought it was undercooked, so I, thought I couldn't eat that.
You told her you couldn't eat it,
Yes.
but she at least tried.
Yes, she tried this.
Okay, and you indicated that as a child you would see how happy Nicole was and how outgoing and dress up, to get kind of attention and stuff like that. You saw Nicole a couple of weeks before what happened in August, correct?
Yes, several days before.
Several days before. And was Nicole still acting in the same way that you've described?
Yes,
Not engaged with people,
yes,
shy,
shy, to herself.
to herself, again, with the computer.
Computer, watching, yes, TV.
Did you have an impression about Miriam and Bob's marriage? Of how they got along?
Well, I think my sister ran the whole show there. He did whatever he was told to do. You know, she was very tough on him too.
And that's based on your personal observations for whatever limited time it was, is that correct?
That's correct.
I might have a moment, Judge.
Yeah.
I have nothing further at this time, thank you, sir.
Cross-examination?
Good afternoon, Mr. Lear.
So,
Mr. Lear, when it comes to the decision of whether or not to send Ms. Nachtman to the Air Academy, you would agree that that decision should have been done by her mother, correct?
that was done by her mother.
Right.
Yes.
And that's the person who should be making those kind of decisions, correct?
I believe so.
And your personal opinions on whether or not you thought it was a good decision really don't matter, do they?
Well, it'd been nice if she had asked the rest of us, got our opinion about that.
Well, but are you all the ones raising her?
Well, we were helping her raise her, you know. I mean, she was coming over to visit, and we were doing things for her.
Now, you described the relationship between Miriam and Nikki. When you were asked about that in a deposition, you recall giving a deposition back on June 18th of 2018?
That's correct.
And do you recall talking about that paint story
The paint, yes.
when they painted the house, correct?
They were coming over to help paint.
And you indicated that they were having fun together. They were like pals with each other, correct?
Well, I didn't state that, but, you know, they were just kind of joking and laughing, stuff like that, when they were coming out of the car to help paint.
Judge, I would object, it's improper impeachment at this point. It's not inconsistent
I'm-
with what he said.
I didn't say it was, but
Well, you're acting like I'm sorry, speak
Approach.
objection.
But we're gonna take a break. We're gonna finish this witness and we'll take our afternoon break.
so at the time they came over to paint, just to clear that up, they seemed happy together, correct?
No, they were just laughing about a joke or something. I think,
And would you not agree that they were like pals?
well, I didn't mean like they were pals or best buddies or anything like that. But that very moment, that was the only time I seen them doing that.
Well, then at this point, let me ask you, do you recall giving a deposition back on June 18th of 2018?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And just to refresh your recollection, do you recall when you were asked how the relationship was, you said, your answer was, well, one day they came over to paint the house, and then the question was your mom's house, And your answer was, yeah, my mom sells help paint the front of the house, and Valley was joking and having fun with Nikki, like they were pals and all that. Do you recall stating that?
Yes.
Okay. Did Nicole ever share any times with you where because you had mentioned earlier today that you thought she might have been scared of her. Did she ever share any times with you where her mom physically abused her at all?
No.
Okay. Did you ever see her mom physically abuse her, pinch her, pull her hair, hit her, anything like that?
No.
All right, Judge, can I approach for a moment?
Sure.
So I'm not sure where we left off. Did you answer that question? Did you ever see any physical abuse to Nicole by your sister?
Objection asked and answered.
I don't know the answer to the question. I heard
I
that.
think you asked to approach, I don't recall an answer, I'm gonna allow him to answer it.
No.
And earlier today too, you talked a little bit about the relationship between Bob and Nicole, correct?
Yes.
All right, and would you not agree that the relationship between Bob and Nicole, as far as you knew, was just a typical relationship between a stepfather and a daughter?
Objection as to the form of the question. It assumes facts not in evidence.
That's overruled.
Did it appear to you to be just a normal relationship between a stepfather and a daughter?
They never had any kind of a lovey-dovey type of relationship. You mean like hugging and, you know, like a,
Well,
I don't know what a normal stepfather and stepdaughter.
Mr. Lear, let me go back to that deposition that you took on June 18th, 2018. I'm going to ask if you remember this, if this helps refresh your recollection. You were asked, what about Nicole's interaction with Bob? Did you ever see any problems with Bob, or how was the relationship? Your answer was, I thought it was just like a normal relationship between stepfather and the daughter. You know what I mean? She complained a couple of times about him getting her to do chores, but that's about it. Do you recall making that statement?
Yes, I recall that.
Okay. Your sister grew up in a family of boys, right?
Yes.
All right, and you mentioned earlier in your direct that, you know, she wasn't able to do a lot of things you all were able to do.
That's correct.
Do you feel that as a result of that, she wanted her daughter, Nicole Nachtman, to be a more independent person?
I believe so.
And you had mentioned earlier also that story about the girl in the computer. From what you're understanding, the minute Miriam found out about the computer, she just went and got Nicole another computer?
Well, that was after the fact, yes.
Yeah, after you all tried to go get it back and you couldn't get it back. And as far as you understood, you told
Well,
your sister she gave her another computer, correct?
I believe she was afraid to tell her mother. That's why she came to us.
Okay, but when her mom found out, what happened?
Well, told me, she just said, I'll just get another computer.
Do you mind me having a moment, Jim?
Yes, redirect.
As it relates to Bob and Miriam, of your own personal knowledge, did any family members go to Miriam and Bob's wedding?
I don't know if anyone did.
Do you know whether or not Nicole even went to that wedding?
I believe she was up there living with them at the time.
Do you know if she actually went to the wedding though?
No.
From your observations of how Nicole acted around you and your family when she was staying with you, and I want to make the record clear, would Nicole stay with you for long periods of time at your mother's house?
Yes, she would.
And she would even stay at your mother's house, even though Bob Dean's home and Miriam's home was just a few miles away, correct?
Yes.
And whenever Nicole needed help, she would call on you or her uncle, not on Bob Dean's and not on Miriam Dean's.
She
Correct.
would only call us, yes.
And it was your impression that it was because she was afraid of the reactions.
I was afraid, well, I think she was afraid to let even Bob know, because Bob would tell, her mother.
Bob would tell Miriam. And Bob she wouldn't call Bob either, she would call her family, correct?
She called me and maybe my brother or my mom.
Did you ever hear Nicole Nachtman talk bad about Bob Dean's other, you said the chores, but she didn't talk bad about him.
Well, one time I believe she called him a jerk or something.
Okay.
I, you know,
And your sister would say things like that also about
also,
Bob, correct?
yes, yes.
Did you think that Nicole looked at Bob Deans as her father?
I don't believe so.
Did you think that she looked at Bob Deans as her protector in any way in life?
I don't believe so.
When Miriam sent Nicole to the Air Academy, she was already married to Bob Deans, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And so Bob Deans didn't take care of Nicole while Miriam was working overseas. Instead, she sent her to the Air Academy, correct?
Yes.
Was it your impression that Nicole was trying to be the daughter that Miriam wanted?
I believe she was. She did whatever her mom told her to do.
Even as she got older, is that correct?
Yes.
I don't have anything further, thank you.
May this witness be excused by the defense
Yes.
and by the state?
Yes, sir.
All right, you may step down. You may be excused as a witness at this time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I think that you could use a break. I will let you know for scheduling purposes. It's going to be a relatively short break because we're going to get out of here by 5:30 today. So I assure you of that. And I will tell you not to discuss the case amongst yourselves with anyone else, not to do any research related to the case, and please avoid any exposure to any reports about the case outside of the courtroom. All rise for the jury. Jury has exited. Everyone may be seated. I could tell, and from the last, they wanted to stand up just to break things up. So we'll do a relatively short break. But I absolutely have to be on the road by 5:30. Do you think we'll finish that next witness? How long is the...
An hour? Yes, we should.
Okay. All right. It'll be a little less than an hour because we'll take a little break. But
Judge, just a question. Now that Mr. George Lear, the decedent's next of kin brother, they want to stay in after their testimony's over.
I don't foresee any problem with that. Is there any objection that I need to...
They've been excused, Judge.
Okay, absolutely. All right, I'll see you all in less than maybe 10 minutes. I want you to take a short break.
if I, and I know, the only reason I wanna bring it up now is because I know the time constraints the court
Right.
has. My intention was to hopefully get a ruling today on whether you believe you established self-defense after Eric Lear. Because there's gonna be a colloquy and a decision by Ms. Nachtman as to whether she has to testify.
Right.
It's a huge decision, based on, you know, what we all now know to be her background and her history. This is not a decision that, she is gonna be prepared to make at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, or even 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I was hoping to have a rule, I believe by the end of my direct, our case will have been established prior to any experts. And I'd like to make argument on the self-defense issue, but I understand that the court has time constraints.
So would you like to do this? Would you like to do the direct, and then I send the jury home? We'll do the cross tomorrow, and then that'll give us some time to argue, because you're not relying on anything from the cross. Is that all right with the state?
Judge, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. The only thing I can tell the court is, if you've noticed, my crosses have been relatively brief. I'm very familiar with what Eric's going to say. I don't know how long, I don't anticipate I'm going to have a lengthy cross.
Right.
I could, and I don't have a problem if
Yours are
you-
much shorter than Mr. Terry's.
and I don't have
No
a problem-
offense, Mr. Terry.
And I don't have a problem if we just want to see where we are.
Right, let's see where we're
That's
at. Yeah,
fine.
let's see how long the direct, but I hear you.
Thank you.
Ms. Nachtman is present. Let's bring him in.
Ready, Judge?
Yes, we are.
All rise for the jury.
Jury is present and seated. Everyone else may be seated at this time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back. Did anyone have any contact or exposure to the case, discuss the case, or do any research related to the case during the last short break? By show of hands. Let the record reflect no hands. Thank you. We are going to proceed. I'll ask the defense to call your next witness.
The defense calls Eric Lear.
Eric Lear. Mr. Lear, good afternoon and welcome. You'll come forward to be sworn wherever you're comfortable. If you'll face me and raise your right hand, please. Thank you. Do you swear affirm any testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, if you'll follow the bailiff around to the ramp that leads up to the witness chair, please watch your step. When you get to the chair, go ahead and have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. That microphone does adjust. Perfect. You may proceed.
Tell us who you are,
My name is Eric Lear, L-E-H-R.
and how are you related to Nicole Nachtman?
She's my niece.
Tell us briefly about the siblings and how you are her uncle. Who's the oldest? Who's the youngest?
I'm the youngest of six. My sister was the next one up, 5 years apart from me. And then it's Peter, George, and then Albert and Louis. I screwed that up. It's Louis, then Albert.
And what about your mother? Is she still alive?
Yes,
How old is your mother?
88.
What about your father? What year did he pass?
2001.
So you and Miriam are back to back, and she was 5 years older than you growing up.
Correct.
Now, as far as nieces and nephews and kind of the family cohesiveness, tell me a little bit about the relationships that you have with your nieces and nephews.
Pretty much all my nephews and nieces grew up in Tampa. My mom raising them because most of my, the ones that have children were pretty much in the military.
Okay.
So they would pretty much be there sometimes for the whole year, sometimes for the summer, but it was never an empty house.
Now, did you at times also live with your mother even into adulthood?
Yes.
And tell the jury about that as far as time periods of when you lived with your mom and kind of what you did to help your mom.
Well, basically, my mom never learned how to drive, so I've been the youngest. I always stayed close to home. So I had a room there, but I wasn't there like 24/7. But a good majority of the time, she depended on me to take the kids somewhere or transport her to a doctor's appointment. So I've been very close by, but there's times that I do stay there.
And you were one of the siblings who did not join the military.
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did. When did you get out of the military?
1983.
But as far as the constant, I guess what I meant to say, the deployments that occurred throughout your siblings' careers, that did not apply to you. You were in Tampa after 1983.
Yes, from 1983 on.
And then Nicole was born in 1994. Is that your recollection?
Yes.
Now, your brother Peter was also in the military. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you know why he was discharged from the military?
As far as I understood, it was some kind of. As far as I understood, it was some kind of depression type of discharge.
So some type of mental illness where it was an honorable discharge.
Yes, it was honorable.
Now, as far as your nephew, Nicole's brothers, Kevin and Joey, what was your relationship like with them during their childhood?
They spent a lot of time at my mom's house, and I would take them pretty much everywhere. So they kind of grew up with me, kind of being like a father figure.
And what year did Kevin pass away?
I know it's-
2003 sound right?
Yeah, about Christmas time, close to that.
Now, Joey and Nicole was the youngest of all of Miriam's kids.
Correct.
And there's about a 12-year age difference between Nicole and Joey.
Yes.
I want to talk about first when your sister Miriam became pregnant with Nicole. Do you remember where they were living at the time?
I think it was Texas.
And did you ever meet Nicole's biological father, Ronald Nachtman?
No.
Did you even know your sister was in a relationship with Ronald Nachtman at the time she became pregnant?
I didn't know specifically, no.
So is how the family learns about this individual is basically through the pregnancy.
Yes.
Around the same time was your sister going through a divorce with Joey and Kevin's biological father, Joseph Carey Sr.
I'm not actually sure what was going on.
Okay, if you don't know, that's fine.
Right.
You're not sure when the divorce was.
No.
But you're aware that at some point your sister divorced Joey and Kevin's father.
Yes.
After Nicole is born, how old is Nicole the first time you meet her?
I think 2 or 3.
What do you recall about the custody situation or the visitation situation between Nicole and her biological father?
My sister pretty much made it impossible for Mr. Nachtman to have access to Nicole.
Tell me what you mean by made it impossible.
Well, I know that she was.
Judge, I'm gonna have a draft.
Legal basis?
This is, can we approach briefly?
Yes.
Nicole Nachtman from Ronald Nachtman, her biological father?
It seems to me that she spent a lot of time in court blocking his
Judge, I'm
acts.
objecting, not what he observed.
I'll caution the witness not to testify to what you know because someone told you. Only testify to things that you have personal knowledge of, which means that you observed them.
At some point after Nicole's born and her childhood, you had indicated there were times when your mother pretty much raised most of your nieces and nephews.
Yes,
And Nicole spent a significant amount of time here in Tampa in her early childhood years.
yes,
Whether it be on vacations, breaks, or what.
school year too.
And what observations did you make about your sister's attempts at keeping Nicole Nachtman from Ronald Nachtman?
I know there was a lot of court cases.
Okay. And that's again observations because she's got a lawyer, she has to go to court, things like that.
And she told me that's what
Okay.
she was doing.
At some point in Nicole's early childhood, do you recall Joey running away from home?
Yes,
Now, there's been a couple of descriptions about runaways, so let's clarify. Was he like running down the street? Did he jump out of a car? Describe to the jury what Joey did to get away from your sister.
he called me and told me he
Don't
was,
tell me what anyone told you.
Oh.
Tell me what you did to facilitate him getting here.
I bought him a bus ticket to Tampa,
And where was he at the time?
Texas.
And he was with your sister.
Yes,
And at the time that the family's made aware that Joey now does not want to live with his mom, the family helps provide the transportation to get him here. You.
yes,
specifically.
me, right.
And where did Joey come when he ran away from his mom's house in Virginia?
The bus station downtown Tampa.
I meant, where did he finally end up and where did he live for the rest of his high school time?
Initially, he stayed with me and my wife at the time, and then he moved in with my grandmother because his friends lived on that street.
Your mother, his grandmother.
Yeah, his grandmother,
Okay.
which is my mother.
So after he runs away, you get him the bus ticket to come down from Virginia. Now he's a teenager at that point.
He's 16 or 15, yeah, I think he was.
Is he by himself riding
Yes.
the bus from Virginia?
Yes,
Okay. And then never, as far as you understood from your observations here in Tampa, never went back and lived with Miriam again.
he did not.
He then joins the military after high school and is stationed at various locations.
Yes,
So Joey runs away at about 15 and comes to live with your grandmother. Where does Nicole stay at that point? She's 3.
I'm not sure where Nicole was at. It seemed like she was always at my mom's house.
Okay. Do you remember at what point Nicole was, the earliest age you can remember Nicole coming to stay with your mom for a significant period of time?
I would say 5 or 6.
And when Nicole would stay with your mom or stay at her house for these periods of time, would your sister be with her or would your sister drop her off?
My sister would not be there.
And for what reason? Was your sister in the military?
Yeah, she was in the military and she was always deployed somewhere.
Okay. How often, so beginning at about 5 or 6, you're observing Nicole stay at your mother's house
Correct.
for significant periods of time?
Yes.
Are we talking about just on the weekends? Are we talking about weeks and months at a time? What are we talking about?
Most of the time it was like for the school year.
And then would there be times where your sister pulled Nicole back and took her wherever she may have been living at the time?
Yes.
Did it appear to you to be a lot of back and forth as far as where Nicole was living?
Yes.
During the times when Nicole stayed at your mother's house, would you say that beginning from 5 or 6, how long did this go on? Did it go on all the way into high school, college? Did it stop? What was the ages in which Nicole lived with your mom for significant periods of time?
I would say it was pretty consistent between that age and age 16. I think when she went to the academy, the Florida Academy.
And we're going to get to that in a minute. But so pretty much off and on, but for significant amounts of times, from about the age of 5 or 6 to about 16, Nicole is living off and on between your mom's house and with her mother.
Yes.
At some point, does your sister actually give your mother power of attorney over decisions for Nicole?
Multiple times.
And how do you know that?
I observed the form that my sister would give to my mom.
And did you actually drive your mom to the attorney because she can't
Yes.
drive to fill it out?
Correct.
So as far as school decisions, medical decisions, there were times where your mother had power of attorney over those decisions for Nicole.
Yes.
At any point during Nicole's childhood, do you remember her having friends, bringing friends over to your mother's house, anything like that?
None.
Are you aware that Nicole went to 13 different schools?
No.
You didn't know a number, but you knew it was multiple schools. One place for a significant amount of time.
I think the only consistency in her life was being at my grandmother's house.
Your mother's house. right?
Yeah, her grandmother's house, my mom's house.
Now, you said at 16 is the Air Academy. Is that the boarding school that your
Yes.
sister sent her to? And you remember that happening about when Nicole was 16?
Yes. I think she spent 2 years, or it might have been 14, I don't know, or 15.
Somewhere in those teenage
Yes, yes.
And did you voice an opinion as to whether that was a good idea based on what you were seeing with Nicole at the time?
Yes.
What was your opinion?
She was doing well. She was going to church every Sunday. She was in a good environment, and we couldn't understand why my sister would just, and she wasn't even local. I don't know where my sister was, but she was I don't know if she was out of the country or wherever, but called just to have my niece removed and transported to some academy across the state for boarding.
And again, what you knew about Nicole at the time, was she capable of taking care of herself out on her own, without the support of the family?
Well, at that age, there was really not much to being that age, because she comes home from school and eats and goes back to school.
But your belief was keeping her in Tampa around the family versus across the state
Right.
would have been better for Nicole.
Yes, for yes.
And did you all voice that, or did you voice that to your sister?
I voiced it to my sister.
She went anyway.
Yes.
Did you maintain regular contact with Nicole even after those childhood years that we've talked about, and even into the Air Academy?
She would come home on the weekends whenever she was allowed to.
And when you talk about home, this isn't a home that Miriam Deans lived in.
No, I mean my mother's house.
What changes did you observe in Nicole after the Air Academy?
She started acting more pessimistic. She wasn't as kept as she was before she left. She was really big into like makeup and all this stuff, and doing her hair and trying on stuff. And then it just seemed it all stopped when she came back from there. As the weekends went on, she wasn't speaking. She just seemed like she was depressed.
Now, when she would come home on the weekends, she would stay at your mother's house?
Yes.
And you would be at your mother's house and make these observations?
Yes.
At some point in 2004, your sister marries Bob. Tell me about that relationship, or what you all knew about Bob. Did you meet Bob before they got married? Anybody go to the wedding? That kind of stuff.
I didn't go to the wedding. I think I met him once before he got married. We went to visit her in Virginia. I can't remember who all went, but we went up there once.
And so it was your understanding that when they met in Virginia and got married in Virginia?
I'm not sure where they got married.
Did you ever see Bob and Nicole interact after they got married?
No.
Do you remember how old Nicole was when they got married? If it's 2004, if you know.
Well, Nicole's a teenager, I think, at that point.
Okay. Any interaction or relationship that you ever saw between Nicole and Bob?
No.
Would Bob come to family functions after they moved down to Tampa?
I think twice.
Okay. 2 family functions. Do you know how long your sister and obviously married until their death? They got married in 2004. How many years that is?
15. Oh, sorry. At the time of death, it would be
11?
Yes, sorry,
And you saw Bob at 2 family functions.
2.
Now, in these times when your sister's deployed or she's going on a work assignment, is Nicole ever staying with Bob at their house in Fensbury and Carrollwood, or is she staying at your mom's?
No, she's not staying with Bob. As far as I know, she wasn't staying with Bob because she would just show up there with suitcases sometimes and
Show up at your mom's
at my
house.
mom's house and really wouldn't have an explanation, but Bob was in town
Okay.
at the house.
So Bob lived in Tampa, and yet Nicole was still coming to stay at your mom's house.
Yes.
After, 2004 and on, are you aware of Bob ever physically caring for or keeping Nicole overnight if let's say your sister had a work assignment or anything like that?
I'm not aware of any time.
Anytime your sister had a work function, she brought Nicole or
Send Nicole.
sent Nicole
Yeah.
to your mom's house.
Yes.
Describe the relationship you observed between Nicole and your sister.
It was kind of bizarre. In front of us, it was kind of lovey-dovey, but then my sisters had a short temper, so it was kind of limited about how long that sweetness between the two. If Nikki did something that my sister didn't approve of, she would reprimand her right away. It didn't matter who was around.
What did you see as far as Nicole's reaction to her mom?
More of fear. She acted like she was terrified of my sister.
Tell me what the earliest ages you remember observing the fear Nicole had of her mother.
The earliest was during the time of the academy. Those years is when it started.
So 16 or so years
Yes,
old.
yeah.
And when you say fear, can you explain to the jury what you would observe in Nicole to indicate to you that she was terrified of her mother?
Well, everything she confided in me started with "please don't tell my mom" and ended with "please don't tell my mom."
Was that a common phrase Nicole used to describe your sister?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
You know, kids all the time don't want their parents to find out something, or, I don't want them to find out that I spent this money. What did you observe about the genuineness of Nicole's fear of her mother?
Well, it wasn't in a tone. Whenever she would say things or confide in me, it was not. It was a tone of fear that my sister was going to find out.
Okay.
She sounded scared. It wasn't like a joking, happy comments. These are, "please don't tell my mom," and I could tell it was pretty serious.
And you're a parent, you have a son?
Yes.
How old is he?
21.
Do you recall a time in high school when Nicole had an apartment and lived by herself?
Yes.
At the time Nicole was in high school attending or living in this apartment, was there still a local family living locally here in Tampa?
Yes, just a couple of miles away.
Okay. So this wasn't a situation where there was nobody Nicole could have stayed with?
No.
Are you aware of who got the apartment or what the reason for the apartment was that Nicole was living in during high school?
I don't know the exact reason for my sister to get that apartment, but I don't think she was around.
Again, going back to Bob, is Bob in the picture at this point living in Tampa?
As far as I know, he is.
Okay. So they have the house on Fensbury in Tampa. Yes?
Yes.
Nicole's stepfather is living in Tampa.
Yes.
Your mother's living in Tampa.
Yes.
You're living in Tampa.
Yes.
And Nicole is in an apartment by herself in high school.
Yes.
Do you know how long that lasted?
I think she only went to the high school for 1 year.
Describe for the jury a little bit. You had mentioned the common phrase, "don't tell mom," became, I guess, Nicole's, what she said often. What types of things did Nicole describe to you or did you observe that would result in this fear of her mother?
Well, I mean, there were many instances, but basically anytime anything had related to food or please don't tell my mom, but can you buy me some M&Ms or whatever? Or please don't tell my mom I broke my phone. Can you help me get another one, or can we go somewhere to get it fixed? That kind of stuff. She was afraid we were going to tell my sister whatever she had done or whatever she was eating.
Tell the jury about an incident that happened at the mall when you took Nicole.
I went to the mall with my girlfriend and my son and Nikki.
Let's put an age or a time frame.
Okay. I'm thinking it's about about 7 years ago. I'm guessing here. Maybe about a year before the murders.
Okay, and I know it's hard because this happened 4 years ago, but it happened in 2015. When do you think the incident at the mall occurred?
Probably 2014.
Okay. Tell the jury about what happened when you were at the mall with Nicole.
Well, we invited Nicole to go to the mall. She had to call home to get permission, so she did go with us. We got to the mall, and we're walking.
Let me go back a
I'm
second.
sorry.
In 2014, Nicole would have been 20?
I think she would. Yeah.
19 or 20?
Yeah, 19 or 20.
In college.
Yes.
And she had to call her mother to get permission to go to the mall with you.
Correct.
Okay? Go ahead.
So then we're walking down the mall, and we're walking like in a group, and we turn around, and Nikki disappeared. So we are looking around the mall for Nikki. Can't find Nikki. So I think about an hour or some. There's a long period of time goes by. We can't find her anywhere. So then I naturally call my sister to find out if my sister picked her up, because my sister had this thing about picking up Nikki from wherever we were at and not telling anybody. So I assumed that it would happen, and I called my sister, and she said she was on her way. She didn't have Nikki with her.
Okay.
So then we finally find Nikki. She's coming from some show they had at the mall, and we tell her that
Would you like a glass of water? Sorry, we can get you some water. And tissue, thank you.
So we find Nikki, and we tell her your mom's on her way because we couldn't find you. We were worried about you. And she just busted out crying. Like I've never seen tears shoot out of somebody's eyes the way they did. And we were just freaked out. We didn't know what was going on. And she's begging us not to let her go with my sister. And it was just this kind of bawling that somebody was terrified. I mean, like they're gonna meet the devil or something. It was just really sudden, and it was so natural, but it was like, it was very, I could see that she was terrified.
And this, you believe, was in 2014, and it was over, just so the jury is clear, her fear that you had called her mom to tell her that she had basically gone missing at the mall.
Yes.
Did you say anything in response to Nicole's reaction to your sister, or did ask Nicole, what in the world are you crying, and it's not that big of a deal, anything like that, or any discussion with Nicole or your sister about it?
Well, I asked Nikki what was going on, and she said she can't say nothing. And then I think
Did your sister show up at the mall eventually?
yes.
Okay. And did you let Nicole go off with your sister?
I asked my sister what was going on, and I said,
Don't tell me what anything your sister may have said, but
Okay.
go ahead and tell us what you said or what you did.
I just basically said what is going on, and that was, it was blown off like somebody's pulling my leg.
So the tears and the fear that you saw in Nicole that day, in your opinion, were genuine?
Oh yeah.
Around that same time, 2014, and I know you said the changes you observed in Nicole started at the Air Academy about 15 or 16, but describe for the jury what types of things that you were observing as far as your niece's demeanor, her appearance. What are you observing as far as changes?
Well, she wasn't talkative like she used to be. She wasn't all happy, bubbly, putting on a show for people like she used to. She would socialize with anybody. In fact, she would walk off at the park and start talking to strangers. That's how she used to be. Where I would have to go get her and tell her, you can't talk to strangers. You don't even know who these people are or whatever. And she would think it's funny. And so basically, she started not being kept. She always looked like what I think would be like a battered woman. She always had that. It looked like somebody been pulling her hair. She wasn't putting makeup on anymore. Her clothes were not matching and not fitting properly for somebody, that's young and whatever. She would have several. I don't know what you call it, but underclothing that was basically she would have more than one layer of clothing on.
So
Basically.
she would wear multiple layers.
Yeah. I don't know if that was the style or whatever, but it was not appealing.
Are you aware about the liposuction surgery when she was a teenager?
After the fact.
Okay. And it's not like your niece was ever obese or extremely overweight as far as you could see?
No.
Did you ever smell a body odor or maybe indications that maybe Nicole wasn't bathing or keeping up with her hygiene?
Yes.
Did you or your mother, when you would observe Nicole at your mother's house, ever comment on her weight or say she was fat or anything like that?
No.
Who in the family, as far as you know, was concerned with Nicole's weight?
My sister.
At any point in Nicole's life, have you ever observed her responding to things that aren't there, talking to herself, talking to people?
Several times, I would just catch her talking to somebody who's not there, like in a chair next to her. That was pretty much the common thing. I think I caught her twice doing that, and there's nobody there.
Okay. I want to break those times up because one of them is close in time to the incident. But let's talk about the first time you ever saw that and when you think that was.
I would say probably about a year before the incident. It was on a weekend, and she was on a lazy boy that we have in the kitchen area or dining area, and she was talking. She was facing the left, like she was looking at somebody and laughing and giggling and talking. I mean, having a conversation, almost like having a conversation with a little kid. It was just bizarre.
Now, there's been discussions that Nicole was on her computer a lot. Is that true?
Yes.
At this instance, did Nicole have an earpiece, or was she talking on her computer possibly, or what did you observe about that?
Well, the computer was folded down, so I don't know if you can still talk to people when it's that much closed, but she did not have an earpiece on.
Okay, so this wasn't her engaging on the computer at all. This was her literally talking to somebody that wasn't there.
Yes.
I'm going to get to the ice skating incident and all that in a minute, but first let me ask you, in all these observations that you've mentioned, you're seeing in Nicole, she's not taking care of herself, she's not bathing, everything you've testified to. Did you yourself ever express your concerns to your sister?
Yes.
And did your sister do anything about it as far as you know?
No.
No interventions, no counseling, nothing?
No.
Did you ever have power of attorney over Nicole's well-being or anything like that?
No.
Let's talk about the summer Nicole comes, August of 2015. Did you see Nicole during that summer?
Yes. She was spending a lot of time at her grandmother's house.
Okay. Was there also a period of time where she went to Washington and stayed with Joey for a few weeks?
I think, yeah, I think I'm not sure how close to that was, but it was over the summer at some point.
And then did you see Nicole after she returned from seeing Joey in Washington?
Yes,
And that was at your mother's house?
yes.
Tell me about any other instances where you saw Nicole either talking to herself or responding to something that wasn't there during that time period or that summer of 2015.
We were going to go ice skating, my son and I and my girlfriend, and Nikki called her mom and got permission to go. So we went to Clearwater Mall. I think that's where it was.
Do you have a time frame just so the jury?
It was in the evening.
No. As far as the days, like how long before your sister's death do you think this occurred?
I think this is the weekend beforehand.
Okay, so your sister, the week of August 20th, 21st, were weekdays. You believe this was the weekend before?
Yes, because she was leaving for school in a couple of days.
Nicole was?
That's what my understanding was. Yeah.
Okay. Explain to the jury what happened.
So she got permission to go, and we went to the ice skating rink, and we had a good time there. We took videos and all that stuff, and then we stopped at I think it was the Wing House I think it was Wing House. We stopped after ice skating, and we're sitting across the table, and then me, my girlfriend, and my son on one side, and Nicole's on the other side with her purse or whatever. I think she was carrying a backpack or something in that seat where she would have her drawing book. Anyway, so we're looking at the menu, and I look up, and Nikki's talking to the chair again. This time there's no computer. She's just talking to whoever she thinks is next to her.
And do you recall, are you able to make out what she's saying when you hear her talking, or what she's saying, or who she's talking to, anything like that?
No, it's a lot of soft speaking with laughing in between. And, okay.
Go ahead.
And I said, Nikki, and no response. I said it like 3 times before she actually turned her face and said, what? I said, who are you talking to? She goes, nobody.
After, let me ask you this. What was your understanding of when Nicole was supposed to go back to FSU that week? Or what day was she supposed to be leaving, if you know?
The next day was Sunday. My understanding was she was supposed to leave for school Monday.
Okay. And at any point, did you talk to her again between the ice skating incident and then when you ultimately learned that your sister and Bob have been killed?
Not between.
Okay. Then at some point, after you learn, and tell the jury how you found out about your sister's death, or...
Okay. My mom called me, and I stayed at my girlfriend's house, and my mom left me a voicemail. So when I left for the gym in the morning, around 6 or something like that, the voicemail said to call her, and I called her, and she told me, can you go by my sister's house to verify that the news is right about my sister? So I go right by there, which was probably about a mile away, and
you see the police and everything?
I see the police, and that's when Detective Messer comes to interview me.
Now, at some point, does Detective Messer ask you to attempt to reach Nicole in Tallahassee?
Yes.
And in fact, do you do that? We've listened to a controlled call, the jury's heard it already, where Detective Messer is actually recording a phone conversation that you had with Nicole.
Yeah, two times.
Okay. And in fact, Detective Messer is asking you to just find out where she is.
He wrote down questions for me, and he told me to just make it sound natural, like you're having a conversation, but try to get the answers to these questions. In fact, it was him and another detective in the back seat. I don't know who that was.
Do you recall who within the family, if it was you, indicated or at first told Nicole that her mom had been in an accident?
That was me.
Okay. And that was at the direction of law enforcement?
Yes.
And you in fact did that?
Yes, I did.
Now, at the time you're talking to Nicole and Detective Messer is telling you what to say or recording it, she actually says that she's in Tallahassee. Is that your recollection?
Yes.
And you actually tell Nicole, there's a detective that's going to come up there and meet you. Talk to them, please, Nikki. Tell them, what you know.
Yes, that was the second call. The first call was basically to let her know her mom was in an accident, and she said she had no gas money. So she never really asked what happened to her mom. But she asked if she had no gas money, and then I offered I was going to put money into her bank account, to call me back with the account number and all that, and I would transfer the money. That was the first control call.
And then the second one was, hey, tell us where you are, and she was trying to figure out an address for her new dorm.
Yes.
Don't tell us what Joey told you, but at some point later in that day, you then get a phone call from Joey, who had spoken to Nicole.
Yes.
There's been evidence introduced to suggest that Nicole maybe had not gotten a dorm room in time. Is that something that, in your opinion, based on your observations of how your sister would react to things, how your sister would react to failings or shortcomings of Nicole, that she would have been upset at Nicole with?
Really upset.
Had Nicole not secured a dorm room in time for the fall semester?
Yes.
And based on the observations you have witnessed throughout the years of Nicole, the mall incident, her fear of her mother, is that something that Nicole would have feared her mother over?
Definitely.
Judge, if I can have a moment. Sorry. When was the last time you spoke to your nephew, Joey?
Right after the passing of my sister and Bob.
So you haven't spoken to Joey in 4 years?
Correct.
And as far as your mother, because you lived there at times, correct?
Yes.
The last time Joey had, or how long Joey and your mother had not spoken?
According to my mom.
No, don't tell me what
sorry.
someone else told you.
Okay.
Any observations that you made if they were having contact since your sister's death, if you know?
No contact as far as my mom. Yeah, as far as I know.
I don't have any other questions, thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's close enough to 5:30 that we're going to save the cross-examination for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So I'm going to release you for the day. I'm going to instruct you not to do any research related to the case, not to discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else, and also to avoid any exposure to any media or any reports about this case outside of the courtroom. We will start at 9 a.m. tomorrow. All rise for the jury. Jury is exited. Everyone may be seated. You, sir, may step down. You're still on the stand, though, for tomorrow, so please don't discuss your testimony with anyone unless all the attorneys, both sides, are present.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, I'm sorry, Ms. Derry, that there was no way that...
That's okay, Judge. I get no problem.
So we'll pick up with cross, finish this witness
sir.
in the morning.
Judge,
Ms. Hersey, you had some argument?
I did, Judge, and I provided the cases to the court well in advance, so hopefully everyone's reviewed it. But my position specifically with Martin v. State, which is 110 Southern 3rd, 936, it's a first DCA case. Judge, this case couldn't be more on point with our facts. If I
But
couldn't-
Martin talks about a condition, there's no expert testimony yet regarding any condition of Ms. Nachtman.
No, there's not, but I think we can talk about what, you've read the deposition, I think we can all talk about what's gonna be discussed. And this case is absolutely on point in that, first of all, as the state has contended from day one, that insanity and self-defense are in some way inconsistent defenses, this case stands for the proposition that if in fact the experts are gonna testify that the delusional thinking of the defendant at the time of the act, somehow due to mental illness, can therefore allow the argument that both insanity and self-defense apply. This case is directly on point. That's the only, I don't think there's gonna be a dispute as to what our experts are gonna testify to tomorrow. It's clear, they've been deposed, and it's on the record. They are going to testify that her delusional thinking was that her mom was literally gonna kill her at the time of these offenses. And so I think it's important to point out, Martin, that these defenses are not inconsistent, and that if, in fact, the expert on insanity can testify to the delusional thinking or the delirium, as it's stated in this case, as it relates to the defendant's state of mind at the time of these offenses, the defendant would be entitled to both jury instructions. So I just wanted to start with that case because I know the state's position has been up until this point that our defenses are inconsistent. Then I would point, Judge, to the Spurgeon case, which is 114 Southern 3rd, 1042, and I'll point to page 5, the right-hand column. A trial court's decision to give or withhold a proposed jury instruction is generally reviewed for an abuse of discretion. However, the trial court's discretion is more restricted in criminal proceedings because a criminal defendant is entitled to have the jury instructed on his or her theory of defense if there is any evidence to support the theory and the theory is recognized as valid under Florida law. The trial court, and this is what's important, Judge, because this is what the state's ultimately asking you to do. They're asking you to weigh our self-defense evidence. They're asking you to examine what's been presented so far and for you to weigh what the evidence is. And this case says that's absolutely not what the court should do. That is a jury question, and if there is the slightest evidence of self-defense, we should get the instruction because that's our theory of defense.
What is the evidence, though? That's what, in the cases that they provided, it's not, and now we've backed away from confrontation. It's not her words, confrontation, and even the witness who testified regarding, he backed off of the confrontation. So the what the F are you doing here is the only evidence that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, what other evidence are you relying on to establish some evidence of self-defense?
Judge, there's an open bedroom window that Miss Nachtman feared confronting her mother so much that she had to jump out of bedroom windows. This is the house she's living in. If they want to, as their argument has been up to this point, she laid in wait, she laid in wait. Why not sit right there in the living room as Miss Deans walks in the front door and shoot her right there? That's not what happened. The evidence by the state's own admission is an open bedroom window that it is clear that's the window she jumped out of and then meets mom in the driveway. Her statement to her brother is, I mistimed when mom was coming home. We also know that this was quick because when law enforcement gets there, the front door is open. It's ajar when they do their safety check. So we know from the evidence and from the state's own evidence that when Miss Nachtman or Miss Deans gets home, her purse and her items, we've seen crime scene photos, are right there in the dining room and the front door is still ajar. We have an open bedroom window. I would submit to this court that I don't know very many people that jump out a bedroom window but for to avoid contact with the person that, in this case, her mother. There's the incident in the driveway, and what the fuck are you doing here? Now keep in mind, and that's why I cited to the Mobley case, which is 132 Southern 3rd, 1160. The objective standard, and I'm on page 4 of the opinion, is applied to determine, in this case they're talking about self-defense, but stand your ground, attaches that the objective reasonable person standard by which claims of justifiable use of deadly force are measured should be applied. That standard requires the court to determine whether, based on the circumstances as they appeared to the defendant when he or she acted, a reasonable and prudent person situated in the same circumstances and knowing what the defendant knew would have used the same force. So now we have to go into Miss Nachtman's mind. What did she know at the time? She knew that she hadn't got a dorm. That's in her statement as well and as part of the evidence. And that everyone has testified, Joey, Eric, who knew Miriam Lear, or Deans, that if she hadn't secured a dorm, her mother was going to go off. And that was going to be a justified reason for her to be terrified of her mother. Remember, it's what Miss Nachtman knew at the time. She didn't have a dorm. Her mom, she's jumping out her bedroom window. She's coming in the driveway. And in her mind, based on years and years of belittling and psychological abuse and wanting to hide things from her mom and fearing that her mom was going to somehow explode or whatever, that was the fear she was exhibiting at the time she shot her mother.
But do you disagree with me that the person still has to do something? If I fear you, if I have a legitimate reason to fear you, whether it's because of a mental illness or anything else, if I have a legitimate reason to fear you, can I shoot you? without you doing anything?
There has to be an overt act by the victim. I would submit to you that the overt act by Miss Deans is, what the fuck are you doing here? That is not, hey sweetie, you're not in college yet, you missed your time to leave. I would submit to you that in Nicole Nachtman's mind at that time, who we've heard was like a child, who we've heard couldn't take care of herself, who we've heard, again, it's an objective standard, but in the circumstances as Miss Nachtman knew them. So we're now heard testimony that she was childlike. She loved Elsa. She loved Frozen. She couldn't bathe on her own without somebody telling her. She couldn't wash her clothes. She didn't know how to cook. So now you have this child. Don't look at her chronological age of 21. Look at Miss Nachtman and what you've heard testimony of people who knew her at this time and described her as. And her mother says, what the fuck are you doing here? That is not an invitation to, hey honey, let's go talk. That's the evidence of self-defense. I'd submit to you, and I'd argue simple, which is the case that says it's the slightest evidence of self-defense, and it's not for the court to weigh the evidence. If we've introduced any evidence of self-defense, we're entitled to the instruction. And for the record, simple is 972 Southern 2nd 912.
Mr. Terry, how do you suggest that you get around Martin versus State?
In Martin versus State, Judge, you have independent witnesses who observed them coming onto the property, okay? The defendant in that case is heard yelling, get off my property, I'm going to get guns. So there's clear evidence in that particular case that that defendant is in fear and is responding to outside stimuli.
But they're uniformed police officers, where a normal person wouldn't be able to justify those thoughts in self-defense. But the court in Martin says that because of his mental condition, even police officers coming to his house to arrest him or for whatever reason they were there, support it.
Correct, Judge, but there is overt actions. There's testimony from independent witnesses to what occurred. There's testimony that the defendant was clearly in fear at that time about people coming onto his property. So there is evidence that's been put in. The only evidence suggested here is the mom saying, what the fuck are you doing here? Which is what, I don't know how that's an overt act. I don't know how that's a forward-thinking act.
So is it your opinion is it your position that the opinion of the first district in Martin would be different if the police had just showed up and said, come out with your hands up, as opposed to what the fuck are you doing here?
Correct.
A statement.
Correct. In his reactions beyond that, and the fact that they came on the property, there's all sorts of differences, Judge. And beyond that, let's not forget the next statement that she gave to her brother. I blacked out after that. So we don't even have her admitting the shooting or acknowledging what her mom did or what she did as a result of it. So she blacks out. I provided Your Honor a case. I don't have them all in front of me because I wasn't.
I read them. I have them here.
But there's a case where
he just says it's self-defense.
He says
when
it's
they come
self-defense,
up,
but he
and that's not
blacked
enough.
out.
But there's nothing in that regarding, like in Martin, such a severe mental condition of the defendant in that case. And I agree with you. That's all they had to rely on was he says to the police, it was self-defense. And the court says that's not enough. But there's no discussion in that case had he had schizophrenia or had he had delusions and all that, whether it was self-defense. I still don't think that it would have been enough in that case.
Judge, my position on the circumstances is, again, taking into account the dorm. And again, the reasonable objective standard in somebody in Nicole Nachtman's position. The reason for the dorm, the comment about if I had only got the dorm information, you have to take it all, the totality of everything that's been presented. We know she didn't have a dorm. We know that from the paperwork. We know that from the housing. We know about when she got the paperwork. And every person that knew Miriam Deans and Nicole Nachtman said that in Nicole Nachtman's mind, that was a legitimate reason to have feared her mother. So there isn't just the overt act of, what the fuck are you doing here? But there is that mindset of Nicole Nachtman. And again, our experts are going to testify tomorrow that her schizophrenia, her delusional thinking, her paranoid thinking, she literally thought her mother was going to kill her at that moment. And that in and of itself explains how, or puts into context, the dorm room and how she really thought her mom was going to kill her. And so I think you have to look at it in the totality.
And Judge, I agree. Let's look at it in the totality. The totality is that she had the chance to leave that place long before her mom ever arrived. She was on the phone with her mom just before her mom arrived. She could have left at any time if she was so in fear and so afraid of her mom. She not only didn't leave, she moved her car so her mom wouldn't see her car there. She still waited at the house for hours for her mom to arrive. This is not a woman who was in fear. This was a woman who laid a trap. All the evidence suggests this is premeditated, first-degree murder, luring the mother in. There's nothing to say that she just happened to be sitting in the house, not knowing her mom was coming, with the car there. The mom walks in and says, "What the hell are you doing here?" And then suddenly she gets freaked out.
Yeah, and
Except
those
that
are
So,
all
so if we look
out
at
of
the
the window.
totality of the
the court
circumstances
reporter
as
can only take down one. All right.
so if we look at it in the totality of the circumstances as she's suggesting, then there is absolutely zero, zilch, nothing of self-defense. And there's no way, Judge, if we're going to take a statement by an individual of what the fuck are you doing here and turn that into self-defense, then we are going to have self-defense cases all throughout the circuit constantly in any case.
Well-
because that's just a statement, it's not an overt act. She was confused. And Judge, you don't have the benefit of this, but the statements that she's made to the psychiatrists in this case, and the doctors in this case, is that the mom looked like a deer in headlights. Well, where's the self-defense there? The mom's like a deer in headlights. She's like, "What are you doing here?"
Well, and I
So again,
understand-
there's no overt act.
And those are obviously arguments, if I allow it. I'm not saying I'm going to allow it. Those are obviously arguments you can make to the jury. And if there is no evidence of it, I mean, the jury's going to be instructed on. My concern is, if I don't allow it, and I should have, we're going to do this case again. Now, that doesn't mean that just because of that concern, I'm going to give them something that they're not entitled to. I'm telling you that it's close. And Martin, and I hear you. But now, and again, even whether I agree with Martin or not, I've got to follow it unless you have something. I understand the case that you want to rely on the second DCA case, and when I read that case, I was with you. But that case doesn't have the mental illness like Martin does. So if you have something else that brings in the mental illness, then I'm willing to consider it. I'll give you time
Judge,
until tomorrow. But I want to address because my concern too, I share your concern that if this is an open door, just anybody can come in and claim self-defense if they fear somebody, but that's not the case. It has to be somebody in the same situation as Ms. Nachtman and anticipating the testimony of these experts. But I haven't heard, I read the deposition of Ewing, I think is his name. But I apologize to you not being able to give you that. I need to hear it, and I need to hear the cross-examination of him before I'm going to be able to decide this. So I'm not giving you an answer today. And I know why you wanted it, because you want to have time to discuss with her decision whether to testify or not.
Yes, sir.
But I don't know why you can't have a conversation with her about if the judge rules this way or if the judge rules that way.
Well, because how we would have presented our case would have likely been Ms. Nachtman before the experts, just to indicate, a basis for their opinion and to kind of put them on after her would be the position. Judge, I want to point one other additional thing, and I know the court has to go. We also have information about the close range firing of these. And we know from Dr. Krastowski, that one shot is, and I demonstrated, was less than 2 feet away from muzzle to wound, and that the other two, all he can tell us is more than 2 feet away. And so I believe that that's also evidence to show this wasn't a football field distance, she wasn't at one end of the driveway and the other end of the driveway, that these were within 2 feet of each other, one closer than 2 feet when she shot. He can't tell us the order of the gunshot wounds, so he doesn't know if the one that's less than 2 feet is the first one. What the fuck are you doing here? And there's an open bedroom window that the evidence has indicated Nicole Nachtman got out of to avoid her mother not laying wait for her mother.
So you're relying, let me see if I can summarize it as this way. You're relying on the close nature of the contact between her and her mother, in addition to the mental state and the statement of what the fuck are you doing here?
Yes, sir. And Judge, and I understand we have not presented Dr. Ewing, but as I stated before, based on the deposition that the court has reviewed to indicate what his testimony will likely be, it is going to be that she literally feared her mother because of the delusions, because of the paranoid thinking, because of the abuse she had suffered for years, and that is exactly in line with Martin v. State. And based on that, we'd ask that you grant our request for the self-defense instruction, and like you said, the state can sit there in closing all day and argue why it's not self-defense, but that's not the standard as to whether we get an instruction on the law or not.
And let me just make sure I'm clear. You're not asking for self-defense as to Robert Deans.
Correct.
And Judge, lastly with Martin v. State, I do believe, Your Honor, if you read the facts and look at the facts compared to this case, it is different. It is different because these officers were approaching him. He was making, and all these officers testify that, he was making threats, telling them, get off my property, I'm going to get guns. That's a lot more evidence that this person was in fear, that he was trying to defend himself. That's a lot of evidence to suggest that. Now, granted, the mental state gets to the next level of saying that's why he didn't realize they were uniformed officers, so he was in fear. But regardless of that, the fact that they were advancing on his property, the fact that he was yelling to them, I'm going to get a gun, get off my property, adds to, that's a lot more evidence than what we have here. A lot more. And if you read the rest of her cases, they all have a lot more evidence than what just these words, what the F are you doing here? A lot more evidence.
And Judge, I would just point out, as in Spurgeon, it's not for the court to weigh the evidence, that's for the jury. The issue is, are we entitled to the instruction? And
I
would
agree
quote
at the end.
from Martin.
There's some evidence. The evidence is the close range, the what the fuck are you doing here, her mental condition. I'm going to allow it.
Thank you, Judge.
See you at 9 o'clock.